After World War I, Americans began to feel wary of communist infiltration into the American government. They felt that communist beliefs conflicted with American standards and that a mix would lead to corruption in the government. To resolve this, the House Un-American Activities Committee, also known as HUAC, was founded in 1938 to find communists or communist sympathizers within the government and other influential aspects of American life. HUAC wanted to find any existing communist influence within Hollywood and make sure no communist propaganda got to the American public in the future. In October, the committee conducted 52 interviews over the course of 9 days on the infiltration of the Communist Party in Hollywood. When the Hollywood 10 did not compromise, the House Un-American Activities Committee overlooked their rights because of their beliefs.
Out of all the witnesses interviewed, most were called friendly witnesses. This was because they were compliant to HUAC's requests, of which are Ayn Rand and Jack Warner. Rand was a very successful writer who escaped from Soviet Russia in 1926. She was asked by the committee to review the movie Song of Russia so that she could identify any communist propaganda embedded within the movie. When she was asked if the movie had either propaganda or a distorted account of conditions in Russia, she replied by saying that she believed that there was an attempt to cut out propaganda. But the filmmakers didn't understand that showing Russian citizens as a happy people was propaganda in itself. Warner was a producer and the vice president of Warner Bros. The committee asked him about his company and the people working there. When he was asked about communism infiltrating the studios of Hollywood, he responded by reading his prepared statement. HUAC allowed him to read the statement even though there was no policy to permit witness statements. Both of those witnesses gave HUAC the answers they wanted to hear, and both witnesses seemed to have been treated fairly by the committee.
The other category of witnesses were the unfriendly witnesses. These witnesses were not as compliant. Writers Dalton Trumbo and Ring Lardner Jr. both fell under this category. Dalton Trumbo liked to express his right to free speech. He criticized HUAC since its creation. So during the testimony, when he requested to read a statement, he was denied. The committee said that this was because the statement was deemed too long. After this, HUAC asked if Trumbo was a part of the Screenwriters Guild.
Mr. Stribling, the rights of American labor to inviolably secret membership lists have been won in this country by a great cost of blood and a great cost in terms of hunger.
Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
Chairman, first I should like to know whether the quality of my last answer was acceptable, since I am still on the stand.
This had nothing to do with your last answer or the last question. This is a new question.
I see. Mr. Stribling, you must have some reason for asking me this question.
You can address the committee.
You do. I understand that the members of the press have been given an alleged Communist Party card belonging to me. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
You're not asking the question.
I was.
The chief investigator's asking the question. Now, are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I believe I have the right to be confronted with any evidence which supports this question. I should like to see what you have.
Oh, well, you would.
Yes.
Well, you will pretty soon. The witness is excused. Impossible.
During Lardner's testimony, he was asked similar questions and he gave similar answers to those of Trumbo's. He defended his right to not be forced to answer questions regarding his membership to any organization. He was first allowed to read his statement, but then he was denied the right when he refused to answer the committee's questions. Both of these unfriendly witnesses, along with the other 8, did not give HUAC the answers they preferred, and both of these witnesses were forced off the stand.
The rest of the unfriendly witnesses were Alva Bessie, Herbert Biberman, Lester Cole, Edward Dmytryk, John Howard Lawson, Albert Maltz, Samuel Ornitz, and Robert Adrian Scott. They are the men who would later be known as the Hollywood 10. In 1949, HUAC continued the conflict by trying the 10 for contempt of Congress with the argument that they refused to answer their questions. This was a very quick trial that HUAC ended up winning. After an unsuccessful attempt to appeal their cases, in 1950, the members of the Hollywood 10 served 1 year in prison and paid the $1,000 fine. That would equal to about $10,000 today. Before they went to jail, the 10 made a short film called The Hollywood 10 to explain their side to the conflict and why they wouldn't compromise.
After the trials in October, producers signed the Waldorf Statement, declaring that their studios would not work with any of the Hollywood 10. More names of supposed communists kept on being added to the list until it was officially referred to as a blacklist. In order to be cleared from the blacklist, you have to 1. Answer for being communist, 2. Name names of other communists, and 3. Engage in an anti-communist act. Once the Hollywood 10 got out of jail, they still found ways to work in Hollywood after the blacklist. Most wrote screenplays under pseudonyms. Trumbo wrote his classic Roman Holiday while on the blacklist.
Some of the 10 tried to argue that the blacklist was unconstitutional and a violation of the Sherman Act, an act that protected the right of every individual to choose his own calling in life and to follow the trade of his choice unhampered by any undue and unfair interference from others. But they failed. In the late 1950s, producer and actor Kirk Douglas had had enough. He asked Trumbo to write and put his name on the movie Spartacus. This was the start to the undoing of the blacklist. In the end, the blacklist was disbanded.
In the year 1965, the Yale Law Journal published an article concerning the blacklist. They concluded that based on other cases, the blacklist was in fact against the Sherman Act. This showed how HUAC and the Supreme Court truly stepped over the 10's rights just because they did not compromise. This case is a perfect example of how not compromising can lead to conflict. This is also a point of history that we can learn from. No one deserves to be put in jail for their beliefs. At first, the American public was on the side of the committee. They wanted the communists out of their country. Later, most of society grew to understand that we all have different beliefs and that the 10 were treated unfairly.